Again, on our Health and Science Focus today, we're discussing living life with bipolar disorder. And talking to us is author of Life Interrupted, a bipolar memoir, Samantha Smirin. Now, she was diagnosed with bipolar 30 years ago and has also struggled to come to terms with her mental illness. So she's written about her struggle. She's written about how others can get through this. Sam, thanks so much for your time. And you would have heard the discussion with the mother-daughter team. We had Rifu and Letsatsi just a short while ago. I just want to know how much of that, sort of is familiar with you, how much of that resonates with you in terms of your experience and your diagnosis and what you were feeling that led you to seek help.
Yeah, I mean, my relationship with my daughter certainly suffered, and I would like to congratulate that mother and daughter for that extremely wonderful relationship that they've discovered. My daughter actually has risen to the challenge, and when I wrote my book, she's written an amazing letter. And it makes me think about how this young generation, in fact, doesn't live with the stigma and discrimination that our generation and certainly other previous generation live with. There's an openness, mental health illness is being accepted. So I think that's such a key relationship, that the mother, father, child within the family have that relationship, because of course when moods change, when episodes come to the fore, it obviously affects the loved one and the family member. And I think to keep the child in the dark, in fact, in terms of my daughter, has been more detrimental than not.
Well, I would imagine that 30 years ago, this came with a significantly larger amount of stigma, Sam, and also, just a lot of misconceptions, and this was taboo to speak about. So your book, you say, helps bust some of those misconceptions. Tell us what it is that you have actually revealed in this to help others.
Well, my book is really my entire story since diagnosis at 18 years of age. And I wasn't even told. I was diagnosed by a psychiatrist and I was sent into a mental health hospital, but I had no idea. And people didn't talk about it. At the time, it was called manic depression, and people were like, oh, well, she's down, or she's so sensitive, or whatever. But people weren't even engaging in mental health illness. So as a result, I denied my diagnosis and I went into a place of shame. And I hid my diagnosis, and as such, I didn't manage it. And I suffered decades of suffering, of hiding, of being isolated, because the stigma and discrimination was, and today it's become so popularized. I think your previous viewer was saying something around everyone's bipolar, in the media, whenever you see a movie, it's, oh, she's bipolar. So I've tried to challenge and try to bring to the fore the serious nature of this illness that so many of us live with.
Well, how have you had to change your life? What is it that you actually had to do, Sam, to sort of, it's been 30 years now. I'm sure that this was happening way before that as well. Since you've known, what are the major changes and shifts you've had to make?
So I think the first thing I needed to do was to accept that I had bipolar. I'd lived in denial for probably 25 years. And living in denial, I was seeking a way of trying to find comfort in all different things. Substance abuse, I used to smoke a lot of marijuana, a lack of self-care, a lot of isolation, a lot of behavior that actually exacerbated my illness. So I took care when I got into that place of acceptance, which is a very long journey and it still is a difficult one. I work extensively in moving into acceptance with my clients. The bottom tier is psychiatric. So one needs to see a specialist psychiatrist to have that diagnosis and have that medical treatment. And the second tier is psychology, working on the mind, working on what it is. Bipolar can result in can exist because of a genetic inheritance, but also sexual assault as a child, the death of a loved one. So there are many reasons, but that has to, at second tier, be managed by a professional psychologist or counselor. And then the third tier is lifestyle adjustment, and that's what I do. Looking at a set routine, looking at a way to manage your sleep, looking and finding out what your triggers are, having an action and crisis plan should you become unhealthy? Should you be moving into an episode? The mood charts, and then of course I'll refer back to the previous speakers, ensuring that relationship with the loved one so that one can get support.
Well, Sam, you spoke of your daughter and just, your relationship there, and you speak of the letter that she wrote. Just talk to us about what this actually does to a family, what it does to that dynamic, your circle, family and friends, when you were going through this, when you were sort of in the midst of it.
Well, it's absolutely, it can be devastating. I mean, my daughter, at one stage, I was completely psychotic, actually, in the room I'm sitting on, and I was jumping on the bed, and I thought there were missiles coming in through the windows, and I was paranoid, I was psychotic, and my poor little 8-year-old child was hiding in the corner right next to me and crying, "Mommy, Mommy," and I needed to go to hospital. My mother was trying to protect my daughter and then trying to convince me to get into the car, and so it can be an absolutely devastating experience and shocking, and can cause damage that will require therapy for the child. So absolutely devastating. And I think one only comes to a position when the family can get together and the experience of bipolar can very carefully be explained, because bipolar manifests in distorted behavior. It's not actually the person, it's the illness speaking. So people from the outside think you want to be aggressive, that you've chosen to be aggressive, but actually that's symptom of illness coming out. So it's very important for family members to understand and not take it personally. So it can be a completely devastating experience for the family members.
All right, thanks so much, Sam Smirin, for sharing your experience. And the more we hear, I think the more aware we will become. Like you say, it is getting a little easier these days for us to address issues like this. And certainly we choose in this forum, in this Health and Science Focus, to highlight these things and bring you just, even if it's the basics that you need, to help you figure out, maybe I need help or my loved one needs help, and this is where we need to go. Thanks so much for joining us on our Health and Science Focus. I hope it really has been insightful and helpful for you this week. Let's take a look at it.